lunch, if you can wrap up your conversations. We're really excited for our next panel. We're going to be focusing on countries, focusing on Article 6, as well as how Article 6 works for project developers. I'm really delighted to be joined by a few folks today. Some folks who work in technology, folks who work in policy, folks who work for governments. And so if you can please give a warm welcome to Sapumal from Xeptagon. So Sapumal is both the maintainer for the National Carbon Registry initiated by the UNDP, but also a grantee in our ecosystem who maintains this open source code base for registry systems integrated to the Hedera Guardian. He'll be joined by Nathalie Flores, who works with StoneX. And Nathalie works both in the policy space, but also is the Vice President of Strategic Accounts and Carbon Markets. She has a very distinguished background, so we're honored to be joined. Former negotiator for Article 6.4 and helping facilitate as a vice chair in that capacity. And very happy to have her and lucky to have her this COP, as last COP it would be impossible to bring her on stage. So, and she's going to be joined by Alan Mahumuza from Uganda, and he's the team lead in the Mobility Bureau and Science, Technology, and Innovation Secretariat for Uganda. And we're super lucky to have these panelists here. Y'all can take a seat. And we're gonna be talking a lot about Article 6 and exploring how digital innovation frameworks work overall, and how they enable governments, standards, and technology systems to work together to get to outcomes, whether it's workflow-based outcomes like we talk about in the Hedera Guardian, or interoperable national registries, how they need to work with standards, how they work for governments. Yesterday we had, and over the last couple days, we've had a series of announcements with the government of Uganda and their Pro Carbon platform, which is a really fantastic digital public infrastructure innovation that enables project developers to get from the idea note stage all the way through to that standard system tied to investors and ultimately to the registry systems for countries. And so during this conversation, we're going to explore different content around that. But I want to pass the mic to everyone on stage to maybe introduce yourself, also your company. And I'm going to start with an opening question on the opportunity for digitalization from your perspective. And Nathalie, I'm going to ask you to maybe set the stage first to talk about what Article 6, what does it look like for the countries in the context of the negotiation, but also how it can enable finance. Nathalie, I'm going to turn the floor over to you, and then we'll work our way back around. And as we go through, I'll come back with a few questions.
Now, yes. Thank you, Wes. I'm very happy to be here and very grateful to be here. I think I've been telling folks around the room that I've been engaging with Hedera and the Hedera Foundation for about 3 years now. Very grateful to Rafael that introduced us in the past. And I think that was my first door to understand this whole digital world and how countries can use perhaps digital MRB, just to give an example. So as Wes mentioned, I work for StoneX. You heard from Alfredo before. We are a financial services company headquartered in the US, a public company in New York, but we have about 90 offices around the world. We trade all the commodities and we offer all financial services, but being a bank. So we are not a bank, although we have a small bank here in Brazil. StoneX Brazil has a small bank to help our agricultural clients over here finance their projects, and then we are able to trade the commodities itself. The carbon desk at StoneX was established about 4 years ago from the necessity specifically of compliance markets for clients from other commodities. For example, clients from metals, clients from coffee, clients from perhaps cotton, that in their value chain are asked for a more sustainable product. So we go to the market and try to get a premium from them when we invest in futures, for example, in other commodities. So going back to digital MRB, StoneX, it's client of most of the digital tech around the world at the moment. But for carbon, we are still waiting for the countries to put in place all these policies that we've been waiting for a while, right? So I was lead negotiator of Article 6 for the Dominican Republic, which is my country. I served countries as well from around the world on negotiations on forestry, basically RED+. And then I had the honor of serving as Vice Chair of Science and Technology of the UN Climate Change. I have to go back to that role because if we delve into the parties to the Paris Agreement, not all the countries have the capability to actually be able to put into place digital framework to do MRV for this. And that's why the UN climate change, when it's making a decision, so going back to the UN climate change, I always like to give context of what the convention does. So what the convention does and the secretariat is to serve the countries. But at the end, who runs everything are the countries, and who makes the decisions are the countries. So there are different things around markets other than the Kyoto Protocol and everything we know about that, and the Excel spreadsheets, and I think we've spoke about this in Davos a lot, like when we talk about digital MRB, it has to be done manually, because if we go back to countries, very small countries in the developing world that cannot put this infrastructure in place, the convention still needs to provide the service for them. So for example, if there's a decision about emissions reductions and reporting of emissions, the convention needs to have a tool, as long as the US, for example, that is still part of the UN Climate Change Convention, meaning that the US still needs to do the GHG reporting to the convention, because they didn't leave the convention but the Paris Agreement. But back to the point, even though that the United States, just to give an example, can report in a very sophisticated way, and small state cannot report the GHG as well that way. So that's why the convention still needs to provide manual services for the countries. Other than that, and going back a little bit to Article 6, all of you engaging with the market, you already know that it's been 10 years of negotiations to put the market together. Now that I'm private sector, I can say this, before not, but I think I call that distractions. So the developed world and the developing world fighting over who is going to reduce the emissions, delayed the process for 10 years, and that's where the private sector came in and put together all the infrastructure we have right now. So now we have drones, we have the voluntary market that I don't like to call voluntary anymore. Why? Because now countries such as, I'm gonna give Latin American example because I'm from Latin America, but we know that African countries are even further and more advanced than Latin American countries. So under bilateral agreements, countries are using voluntary carbon market infrastructure to save time in deploying the climate action that we need. So we have countries like Peru, Chile, Paraguay, Panama that are accepting in their frameworks voluntary carbon markets standards. Why is that? Because the Article 6.4, which is the cooperative approach of the Paris Agreement for markets, it's developing the methodologies that are going to be in place for the market. Now, the bilateral cooperation in between countries, which is Article 6.2, it's using infrastructure from the voluntary market to save time. Countries are not going to be able to meet their Paris goals if we don't unlock what the voluntary carbon market has in place, and thus digital MRV as well. So I will leave it over there, and then we keep the conversation going around what countries are advancing using infrastructure from the voluntary carbon market.
So I want to pivot over to talk about that infrastructure. And so, Alan, Uganda just launched Pearl Carbon. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you work on, in addition to the Pearl Carbon platform? And can you help frame what does it mean for Uganda, and what does Uganda need to help scale? And maybe it's an ask to the folks in the room, how can they help?
Thank you, Wes. It's a pleasure to be here in the Amazon. It's my first time, and I should say it is quite the experience. I wish I could take a stroll through the Amazon itself, but maybe that'll be for another time. So I come from Uganda, from the government of Uganda, where we are we are looking at how do we leverage technology to harness value across the entire pipeline of the carbon market. Because it's easy for you to look at it from the point where the project has already been figured out, and you're trying to see how you leverage the carbon market to get financing out of that. But this conversation is to start even right from project identification and design, and should be things that are of impact beyond just the economic opportunity, but also in terms of, well, not from the financial opportunity, but also the economic opportunity. To what level are we, say, developing technology that is being leveraged, to implement these projects, and also to have that access to the carbon market across the entire pipeline. So that is what we're looking at as the Science, Technology and Innovation Secretariat. My specific role is more on the side of mobility, where we are pursuing building the entire value chain for sustainable mobility solutions in country. And we have established Africa's biggest electric bus manufacturing facility. And we're rolling out a very interesting project that is also a carbon project in the area of electric mass transit, transitioning our informal, heavily reliant on end-of-life vehicles to electric vehicles. So that is the perspective from a project design, right from what is the project we are sending out. Because I don't think this should be a pull approach, but a push approach. Now, the Pearl Carbon platform is now looking at the pipeline itself. How would we also harness the opportunity along the pipeline in terms of the underlying technology that enables the pipeline? Of course, the projects go through the pipeline, and that is critical, but we also feel it is critical that there is involvement in terms of harnessing the value of the innate pipeline itself. And the Pearl Carbon platform, which we have worked on with our friends from EverCity, is really towards that. You have aspects of data sovereignty. Where is the data going? And can it be leveraged to also be able to unlock other opportunity beyond the carbon market? So this platform is leveraging artificial intelligence and the blockchain technologies, right from enabling the communities to be involved and to understand this initiation of projects. Most times, the communities who are the actual beneficiaries of these projects have absolutely no idea how these projects can be converted into carbon projects, and how they can leverage their efforts, because it's really their efforts to tap into potential avenues for generating more financial breakthroughs. So this platform is there to bridge that gap, to bring this complex and it's like a web, which requires up to I think it's close to $500,000 plus just to get you to the point where you can plug in. So we have gamified the process. We are leveraging generative artificial intelligence through probes and prompts to ease the process for anyone who has a project, because they have the information, but how it is packaged is what matters. So this platform is there to bridge that gap. So that this is the technology that brings this to the actual implementers of the project. So that they can leverage it and be the actual beneficiaries of the outcomes of this project. And for us, that is extremely important, because that is when we will empower these communities to be able to know that, yes, I'm doing this for the environment in some cases, but in other cases, like e-mobility, the real value is in moving people more efficiently, and the climate aspect is an outcome of that. But if it's the biodiversity being the aspects around the Lake Victoria, making sure that we are maintaining that and protecting it, it requires resources. The communities can access, can be able to package some of the innovative solutions they have come to design, and to be able to go through this pipeline with ease and without the need for specialized training and experts from Europe and from Asia, but they can do it themselves and access this market. So this is the potential we are seeing, and right now we are rolling it out with government and the private sector to see how we also fine-tune it along the way, and then we can plug it in across to be able to access these carbon markets.
Very good. And I now want to go to Sapumal and to talk about, so the carbon market infrastructure that we just talked about plugging into. One of the big topics is the country-based registry systems. Many countries have chosen to build their own registry infrastructure, and Sapumal and the Xeptagon team based out of Sri Lanka have maintained the National Carbon Registry in a way that helps make that infrastructure easier to build and to use. Now, one of the things that we're extremely grateful for to Sapumal's team and very excited about is the integration of the Hedera Guardian capability to bring access to the world's largest methodology library, but also helping build a bridge that we think is very important between the independent crediting standards like Vera, who use the Guardian infrastructure, to help use our networked capability where one party publishes a methodology, the projects who maybe are coming from Pure Carbon can answer, but then the registries can be sovereignly managed by the countries. So Sapumal, as part of your introduction, can you walk us through what that looks like for countries, maybe with a few examples? And before I go there, I want to also invite up Michael Mathres from ITMO Limited, who is going to take over the moderating duties after battling some very tough COP traffic and help facilitate the discussion going forward. But just give a big round of applause for Michael and a thank you for coming over after battling through Belém traffic. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sapumal.
Thanks, Wes. Hi, everyone. Sorry to be late. I was caught up in COP sessions, and my God, I really wanted to get out. So I'm very happy to be here with those you beautiful people and, of course, normal people, because at the COP, it's very intense. And the sauna effect of the AC not working is not really helping the minds to proper functionally. But anyway, here we are, and once again, apologies for being late. So please, I'll let you speak, and then we can go into the discussion.
Thanks, Michael, and it's a pleasure being here. Thanks, Michael, and it's a pleasure being here in Belém and COP30, and also special thanks to Hedera team to getting this up and going this again for the fourth time, I heard. So if I talk about a little bit about Xeptagon, what we do is we are a climate technology company. We mainly make open source systems. So we have in our tech stack every system that is required for end-to-end of the carbon life cycle. So we have the carbon registry, the national carbon registry. Then we have the national transparency system. So if you want to report to UNFCCC on BTR reporting, then we have a carbon exchange solution if it's required, the digital MRV, CBAM supporting tool. So most of these systems are open source, and for example, if I take the National Carbon Registry, it's developed together with UNDP. It's an idea that came from UNDP, New York climate team. Same goes to the climate transparency system. So what the whole idea was that when it comes Article 6.2 or any Article 6 journey for a country, they need a significant amount of budget to get to that infrastructure. So for example, they would require, if I take an example, a country like UAE, their national carbon registry budget is around 3 million USD, which cannot be afforded by a developing country, which is a big capital investment for them, and there's a lot of risk. So what UNDP did was they put up a team and they developed a national carbon registry from scratch, which is very UI UX friendly and simplifies a lot of things, where countries, rather than spending 3 million USDs, which I mentioned, they can do it at a very much lower cost. So this same applies for national transparency system. So if you are tracking your NDCs and wants to report to UNFCCC every year or every 2 years, you can use this system and do it automatically. And the beauty of these systems is both the systems are open source. So the National Carbon Registry has something very unique, which is most of the countries are battling fraud, then they are battling double counting, that sort of issues. So to avoid that and to use a lot of methodology-driven data, it is integrated with Hedera Guardian. So the basic UNDP system has one generic methodology. So whatever the project you do, it has to go through that methodology, and most of the project data will be a PDF form. But if you integrate with Hedera Guardian, each methodology, it has the granular data capture, so that you can use that data in a later level. So this National Carbon Registry system, it's not only for Global South, it has now got attention of developed countries as well. So for example, Xeptagon is right now working with companies here like Ernst & Young in the Middle East region for proposals. Then we work with SK Securities in South Korea for using the same platform, as well as some partners in Japan, as well as in Hong Kong. So that's about it. So in a summary, what we have done is like we have helped UNDP, like we have been the contractor to UNDP for developing this open source system, completely built from scratch. The code is available on UNDP Git repository, and this has a Hedera Guardian integration where you can have that blockchain, the beauty of blockchain, Hedera Guardian's advanced features embedded in it, so that any country can get on board to join the journey.
Thank you. If I can take a step back and maybe give a bit more context about the title, because it's both intriguing and we need to deconstruct it a bit. As you probably know, Article 6 was signed 5 years ago in Glasgow, and all the rules and regulations were set in the next 5 years, and such that last year in Baku, most of the, if not all the rules and regulations about Article 6, including 6.2 and 6.4, were agreed. Now, I don't know if everybody is aware about what Article 6 and 6.4 are. Maybe just a quick recap so that we're all on the same page and we're discussing the same thing. So 6.2 is basically from the host country, from the national government, also known as sovereign carbon issuance, that the country is able to issue at national level once it has implemented all of its requirements under the NDC, and there's a lot of other articles that they have to follow, but basically at the end of the day, if they do all the right things, then they're able to issue Article 6.2 credits. Article 6.4 is a little more nuanced, but it involves the private sector. So if you wanted to develop a project under Article 6, you would have to go through Article 6.4. And once you do that, you again have to respect all the necessary rules and regulations of the Paris Agreement. You're able to work with the countries, and I'm not going to go through the technicalities of the LOAs and et cetera, but once you have all the requirements and once you have checked all the boxes, then you're able to issue Article 6.4 emission reductions, as they're called, with the country, and then put them onto the what is known as the Paris Agreement carbon mechanism, which is also known as the PACM, almost like Pac-Man. So PACM is the new Paris Agreement carbon market. So this is why I think it's very interesting, because everybody has been talking about Article 6 over the last 5 years, and this is the first year where we're actually implementing Article 6. So you will see the first Article 6 transactions both announced this year. In fact, last week, Deutsche Bank announced the world's first Article 6 large transaction with the Republic of Honduras and the Republic of Suriname, and many buyers, including Siemens and Bayer, and I forgot a few other names, are intending to buy those Article 6, and if I might add, Article 6.2 credits for their own purposes. And then I just wanted to add one more piece of context so that we're also on the same page. Last week, the EU, and I don't know if everybody knows, last week the EU made a big announcement by saying that they will only accept Article 6 credits into the EU. Okay, so as of 2040, I know it seems far away, but the implementation phase starts in 2030. So we're talking about only 5 years. But this is just to explain that the market demand is going to grow massively. Here we go, you're talking about the largest trading bloc in the world, i.e. the European Union, that has said that they will only accept Article 6 credits into the European Union to fulfill either the member countries' NDC satisfaction or the corporate or investment needs as well. So, with that, here we are, and here we are sitting down trying to figure it all out and how to manage this implementation phase that we're all in. So I just wanted to ask everybody, and maybe this was asked already, but what do you think is the main challenge with regards to implementing Article 6 at country level or at project level, whichever you feel more comfortable in talking about? So whoever wants to start?
Maybe.
Nathalie? Woman first.
Thank you. Yeah, it's okay. Thank you, Michael. And I'm very happy to be here with you. Like, for those that don't know this, Michael and I used to work together when I was living in New York in 2018. Yeah. So I learned a lot from him and everything that the Coalition for Rainforest Nations have been putting together for many, many years for the countries of their membership. So, but going back to your question, and before I spoke a little bit about what StoneX does and how we are looking at this from our clients' perspective and how we walk our clients into carbon and in being compliant with that, I think right now, probably the challenge is interoperability, because once we have the interoperability of a very fragmented market that needs liquidity, then we will be able to actually call it a market. I think that the countries of the member countries of the United Nations, which is the people that we vote to represent us over there, right, and sit at the negotiation tables and put together these decisions, have figured out in their timing and in the multilateralism timing what needs to be put in place from the international framework to the national framework in order for the private sector to operate. For example, at StoneX, we are super regulated because we trade, and we trade futures, and we hedge, and we are looking into CBAM, and we are looking into every carbon tax or every carbon pricing around the world. So if we try to match the interoperability that is needed, then we will be able to make our clients invest in the carbon accountability that we need to actually reduce carbon emissions. I think that the United Nations, as an organization and as a country, something that needs to provide services to the countries, have done a lot for countries to actually be able to report, do their reviews. We have the implementation agencies that the countries also put together, but we need financial services and financial mechanism and banks and insurers to be at the table to actually be able to meet the full circle of liquidity. So I think from my perspective and the perspective of our company and the business that we do, I think interoperability, it's something that we are facing very, very hard. And I don't know, I will let my colleagues delve in that. But for me, I think interoperability.
No, thanks, Nathalie. And I completely agree with you. In fact, I think this was 2 nights ago. I keep on losing track of time. I'm in the COP week time when you don't really know which day it is anymore. There was at the Article 6.4 discussions and sessions, they did mention interoperability as one of the main challenges that they're trying to solve with member countries. So it's a very, very good point. Does anybody else want to add your challenge, compliment, or add anything new?
Yeah, thanks, Nathalie, for that comment. And interoperability has been like one of the biggest challenges, especially when we come to the UNDP National Carbon Registry. This was considered in the design. So actually, this carbon registry actually can work with external parties. For example, if you are doing an ITMO transaction, it can report to the ITMO platform. And some countries, as you know, require voluntary carbon market issuances reported in NDC. So this registry also supports read-only data from Gold Standard and Vera once their APIs will be opened up. As well as, in addition, it pumps all the data to CAD Trust. And if there's any other requirement there, the API configurations are left. And the open source registry has everything where any country can open up. So that's going in that direction, but still at the early stage. I'll just add one more point, Michael. When we have been involved in implementing national carbon registries for Article 6.2 in a couple of countries. So one thing we saw as one of the biggest problems is the country policy frameworks being not ready. So that's currently being done. So that has been a big bottleneck. And the second one is when we develop the registry, let's say a donor agency funds, the host country sometimes doesn't have a body to run it and operate because it's run by the government. It's not like a stock exchange. So that's also another 2 problems we see as big gaps.
Yes, very good point. And we did find that challenging as well with Honduras, both Honduras and Suriname. And fortunately enough, this was solved by leadership. So basically the president of Honduras and the president of Suriname said, look, we're going to dedicate 2-3 people to help you implement the policies required so that you can implement the national registry and so that you can manage the national registry as well.
Yes,
please.
Yes, Michael. I think from, of course, on top of those challenges, from our perspective as well, coming from Uganda, the ability to initiate high-value projects and the capacity to do that, we're leaving a lot of money on the table, opportunity that we're not tapping into at all. So even if we solve the interoperability problems, but when there's nothing coming into the pipeline to harness and to be able to offer the global market, then it's of no value. So I think from my point of view as government, trying to figure out how do we create the right capacity internally to be able to identify opportunity, to be able to harness that opportunity, and package projects that are of high value that can leverage the carbon markets to harness that potential. So being able to have that demystified and see how that pipeline can be very well understood, and making sure that even the technology that we are leveraging is also being developed internally, because we're looking at things to do with MRV, digital MRV, and IoT devices. Just access to some of this technology could hinder the capacity to have a very high value project. If we're able to identify these opportunities and deploy the right technology and build the right capacity internally, I think we will be standing at a very much better position to have some more impactful conversations.
No, it's a very good point, and if I may confirm with you that this was a point discussed at the A64 supervisory body meeting 2 days ago, and in fact one of the member countries actually complained and said that things were not moving fast enough in terms of, and this was in regards to the methodologies accepted at 6.4. Just so you know, at the moment, if you want to submit a methodology to the A64 body, it has to be reviewed by the UNFCCC and the experts there, and at the moment you're talking about 6 months to 12 months to accept a methodology. And here we are discussing, how to implement climate change solutions at speed and scale, and yet, it's taking 6 to 12 months to accept a methodology. And unfortunately, that slows down the capacity of countries such as Uganda to basically come up with the right methodology and come up with the right projects in those countries. So we know the problems, we know the challenges. You know what's going to be my next question? What are the solutions? What do you bring to the table, to the country, to the UNFCCC, to the project developers, to the investors, to really scale up this market? Who wants to start? Should we start with Nathalie again first?
Every time you do that, I'm like, I can start a monologue. So I talk, I talk a lot, and you have to stop me.
You can start if you want, and I'll stop you.
No, I think the most important part of all of this is to understanding the timing that we have, right? We are in the middle of the Amazon. We are in one of the most amazing places in the world. And still, and I'm going to become a little poetic rather than political, which I'm usually like that because of my background, right?
Please, more poetry. More poetry, less
right.
politics.
So, to my point, like we are here in the middle of the Amazon. We need to deploy climate finance. We want to advise all the, family offices and the funds and the capital markets that that are our clients. We have 4,000 full-time employees working for about 40,000 commercial clients around the world. And these commercial clients have compliance schemes in their countries that are telling them that they need to pay a tax for carbon or either change their operations and compensate that. Then the Amazon, just to give an example, because I can give the example of my country, the Dominican Republic needs the climate finance to adapt. We live from tourism. We have the nature capital that is being damaged by erosion, by any type of issue, waste, and still we are not developed, and still we have nature over there that can be protected and that can be an expert to whatever we have to do. So what I want to say with this is that the solution is operation, right? And I'm gonna give 2 examples. One is Japanese crediting mechanism, and now Japan is connecting the Japanese crediting mechanism with Article 6 under Article 6.2 because it's the fastest way for them to deploy finance, but that finance they are deploying is to meet their own, commitments of carbon emissions reductions. Then you have Singapore. Singapore carbon tax starts to be fully operational in January 2026, and then what Singapore needs to do? Sign all the bilateral agreements they've been signing. They signed one with the Dominican Republic, but the government of Singapore and the Dominican Republic needs to define how they are going to put in place this implementation agreement so it has integrity and every requirement of Article 6. So to my point, we need to rely on the compliance because from my perspective, private sector, it's going to see profit from compliance because they need to do it yes or yes. The laws are there, and we need to follow that path.
Thank you, and I think that's a very good point. And I think the common denominator with the two examples you've used is once again leadership. I think if you did not have leadership from Japan at top level, you wouldn't have the implementation of Article 6 within the Japanese carbon market. And similarly with Singapore, if you didn't have leadership from the top saying we want Article 6 in the Singapore carbon, well, with the carbon tax and the carbon markets, it would not have happened. Who wants to go next? What's your solution?
I can go next. I think from the project initiation point of view, with some of these other processes notwithstanding, there are things that are within our control. For example, as a country, we have all this opportunity of biodiversity, we have all this opportunity of the transition to clean mobility with over 95% of our grid renewable. The question now is, how do we deploy the right technology to make sure that these projects can actually become climate projects? One thing we are doing, the platform we launched yesterday at COP, is to kind of address that gap. Seeing how we put the right technology in the hands of the project owners to be able to seamlessly and easily, using technology that never existed a decade ago, or even 5 years ago, like artificial intelligence, that has unlocked, opportunities to get data and convert it into something that is required. Because the data is there, we know the data, we know everything about the project, but how do you package it as a climate project? That is normally where the challenge is. So harnessing the right technology to bridge those gaps becomes very important. And we are excited to see how this platform will unfold and how having this technology in the hands of the people will help to unlock that potential. I think the other aspect now is on the implementation side of the project. Because if you're not able to measure and verify, you leave money on the table. And that also is a technology problem. It's technology that enables us to confirm that indeed you're not double counting, and what you've said you have mitigated is actually what you have mitigated. So if it is in terms of IoT devices, but also how do we make sure that, because each project could be unique in the terms of the technology required for that project. So how do we develop the capacity internally as well to be able to deliver on solutions for those unique use cases of technology to ensure that we can have high-value projects at the end of the day, being able to indeed confirm that this has been the mitigation and this has been the impact.
Yes, and I think that's very smart of you in Uganda to implement those things from the start, even though you don't necessarily have those Articles 6.4 or 6.2 projects available. Please.
Yeah, so I'll talk on the technology perspective because we are a climate technology company. So just adding on to what our colleague said. So when these government systems, sometimes when we develop it, and after that there's no one to maintain it. So it gets, after some years it gets lost. So I'll just give an example, a solution we came up. This is for a South American country. We are working together right now, and it's with World Bank Group funds. So our company is in the process of getting contracted to develop their national carbon registry. So what we have said is, like, we have seen this happening from beginning. During us developing the system, just have 2 of your engineers, local engineers working with us. So they will be working together with our team, and over time, when we develop the system, because our systems are open source, we can hand it over. So we'll be handing over the system to those engineers who will continue it. So there is sustainability. So we just don't provide technology just one go, and we make sure that there is sustainability by doing things like that. In addition, for most of the problems we have, like double counting, transparency, we integrate Hedera blockchain, that sort of solutions we already do. And the open source solution, we also have different flavors because different countries have different tastes. So we have been extending that framework so that most of these problems can be solved. So for example, like some countries want to take part in trading, so that the open source solution, we have different versions which has that capability. So that's what we are doing. But most importantly, what we have done is like enabling and creating that sustainable effect in national countries, because all the countries we cannot support, and sometimes when it comes to government procurement, let's say you want to change, you have to go through the whole procurement change, which might take an year. So when you train the local staff, local government staff, then that problem is solved and can continue.
Yes. So sure. Yeah, I think we got. I don't, how much time do we have left? 1 minute. Okay. Well, then as the moderator, I'll give you a minute. Nathalie, this is the floor. This is your floor.
I just wanted to mention that also, like, the countries have been creating so many things for so many years. You know, I already mentioned Kyoto. There's other compliance requirement that sometimes people forget, which is CORSIA, right? From the International Aviation Association, which are the countries as well. And CORSIA has a requirement now that we have the parties agreement and the Article 6 finalized, which is the letter of authorization of the national designated entity to the parties agreement. So my other solution is we need LOAs from countries in order to be able to trade.
Nice, thank you. Well, on that note, on that very positive note, I think we have to conclude this session. I hope we've enlightened you on the implementation of this whole digital infrastructure at country level and project level. And if you have any questions, please come to all these wonderful speakers, and we can have this discussion in this wonderful Hub Culture Pavilion. Thank you, Stan. You're the best.
Thank you, Stan. You're the best. Yes.
Thank you.